One morning, our friend sent us a message asking if we wanted to join them on a trip down to San Francisco. Pino had all this food stocked up. It was already prepared for a long sail, so we said, why the hell not? We left Victoria early in the morning. Unlike our last trip across the Juan de Fuca Strait, the water was dead calm. The next stop was Nia Bay. The sail there was also slow. The strait looked asleep. Barely any waves to be seen. We met with our friends from sailing vessel Essencia over there. We rafted for the first time and celebrated taking the big left, as people around here like to call it. We left Nia Bay and caught some wind further offshore. At 40 nautical miles out, we had great wind, and no complaints. Night watches are always scary, but we kept an eye on the radar. Keeping an eye out for ships at night in fog is senseless. It's like looking at a wall. Going at 7 knots. 16 knots of wind. There's big waves. We made the decision to stop in Newport, Oregon to wait for the weather to settle around the dreaded Cape Mendocino. The fog parted just as we arrived. Essencia joined us there for drinks, and then we visited the small town of Newport and some of its noisy inhabitants. Somehow, I'd grown accustomed to seeing sea lions on buoys. Isn't that where they come from? We spent 4 days in Newport, working on Markle from cafes and exploring the area. This was a memorable stop. We made the decision to leave early, before our friends. We parted ways for a little while and left Newport for the ocean again. The coast was, as always, engulfed in fog, and no matter how far we went, there it was, thick and wet. We couldn't trust our eyes. The radar did most of the work. We rounded Cape Mendocino at night, and when we did, the wind just died. There we were, becalmed in front of the cape. We had trouble finding wind after that. Some of it was contrary at times. Tacking back and forth can be exhausting. At least we made some friends along the way. We'd heard of birds taking shelter on boats sometimes, but we'd never experienced it until now. We grew fond of our new skipper. We let him tend the sails and navigate, but he didn't seem to care for life at sea. Once he was fully rested, our skipper jumped ship, and we continued to bob along to our next destination, Fort Bragg. We stopped in Fort Bragg for fuel. In the bay leading there was many whales, their mouths pushing out of the water to eat. We arrived there in the dark, trapped in fog, as usual. To make things worse, it was low tide and the path leading inside was windy and narrow. The highlight of our trip there was the apple orchard. The day before, we'd had problems with our autopilot, so we took it apart to see if we could fix it. The next day, we left early in the morning, in low visibility, following the fishing boats out into the bay. This was going to be our last leg before San Francisco. Pino found wind again and zoomed down the coast. The autopilot stopped working again after a while. We tried to fix it underway, removing the helm and putting our new emergency tiller to the test. So our autopilot broke. That means we're gonna have to we're gonna have to drive properly for once. Properly, I mean, hand steer. The robots can't do it for us anymore. So, and we're 1 day away from San Francisco. That means our last night is gonna have to be spent outside.
The belt of our auto-helm was just too worn.
It's okay. We have good wind. The Gennaker's up.
A few hours after that, our Gennaker exploded. We watched it flail in the wind, all torn up.
This trip is gonna cost us a lot of money.
We lost two things, just the day before getting into San Francisco. It was a long and wet night.
30 minutes ago, we tried our autopilot for the last time. We gave up, tried to fix it, it just doesn't work. And now we're flying, making good speed with the Gennaker, and then suddenly it explodes. So, I don't know. It's like San Francisco doesn't want us. And it's irreparable, we can't fix it. It's like torn in half. Look at that. It's such a... Let's just say we're looking forward to getting there.
But the next morning, we rounded Point Reyes and settled into Drake's Bay for a few hours to make some pancakes and to get a bit of sleep. Full of food and rested, we made our way towards the Golden Gate Bridge.
Where are we?
San Francisco!
Well, almost. It's not there.
We couldn't see it until the last moment because of the fog. There was a lot of action under the bridge when we arrived. Kite surfers, tiny sailboats, trimarans, and zodiacs all over the place. I was clinging to the helm, making sure I didn't miss a thing. We made it to San Francisco. Not bad for people who started to sail just 6 months ago. As always, thank you for keeping us afloat. Literally.
Juste manqué. Ah non, mais c'est vrai, on s'est pas eu ça. C'est vrai, ils vont être à Inner Harbor. Yeah, I guess. Ils doivent tourner ici.